Hey, it's Luna the Zen Witch. It's showing that I'm live right now. So this is my first live stream. And yes, I'm doing this on a Mercury retrograde. I'm aware of this. And why? Because I am the stubborn astrologer. I think that might be my new business name, is the stubborn astrologer. With Mars in Taurus, I am aggressively stubborn. So there we go. So I'm on today to talk about this current Mercury retro, and happy full moon, by the way. It is November 12th, 2019. Full moon today. Let's go here and let's go here. Wait. All right. So we've got a chart up. This is the current transit chart. And what we see up at the top here is this retrograde Mercury in Scorpio. It's technically not conjuncting the sun right now. The rules for transits are usually no more than a 2 degree. Okay, this just weeds out a lot of stuff that, isn't that important. And let's face it, we're working with unless they're happening in a personal way for us. So, for instance, you have this Mercury retro in general, and transits. When we're looking at transits, we're talking about a weather report, the astrological weather report. And I also want to, before I even go there, talk about some language here, because it's, I want to steer away from the language of causality, of the planets or a transit causing something or other. There is a correlation. Correlation does not mean causation, okay? And in astrological language, the planets do not compel, all right? They don't make us behave anyway. What they do is reflect. Well, the way I approach astrology is that what's happening in your natal chart, what's happening in the heavens in real time, are reflections of what's going on down here. They are descriptive of what's going on in your life of traits. So it's hard. It's hard to get away from the causality thing, and you will hear me using that language because that's the language that astrology is generally written in. But what I want to do is move the discussion out of the realm of superstition, which is one of my main allergies. Superstition and dogma is the other one. So move it away from the language of superstition into the language of insight and empowerment. Okay, so that's where we're going. So now I sidetracked myself. But when transits are happening, it's like a weather report. So it kind of lets you know some things that you may be encountering, some things that you may be experiencing internally. So let's look at this Mercury retro. And is a already up on my channel. I know it's 6 years old, but I don't really have much to add to it about what Mercury in retro in general means. The only thing I left out of that video is the shadow information. This from Astrology Horoscope Readings. I don't see an actual website, but when I go looking up retro information, I go to this site because it gives you a really great visual of when the shadow period starts. Let's look at this current one. When the shadow periods are the post shadow. So it's just a wonderful visual. So what is the shadow? The shadow is, we've got Mercury retrograding at a certain range of degrees. So this current retro goes from 27 Scorpio to 16 Scorpio. So it hits 27 Scorpio, it backs up to 16, and then it goes direct again. So it's got to go over those degrees again and then pass 27 degrees, which is where it's stationed retrograde. All right. So when Mercury is moving along on the first pass and it hits 16 degrees of Scorpio, which is the degree it will back up to, the degree where it will turn direct again, that enter the pre-shadow phase. Then it goes forward and it hits 27 degrees, and then we have the actual retro. It stations retrograde, retrogrades back to 16, turns direct again. goes up to 27 degrees. So when it goes direct again, we are in the post shadow period. That the shadow period can sometimes be worse than the actual retrograde because it's like a preview of coming attractions. It's going to delineate the area of your life that is likely to be impacted. Now, how do you know the area of your life that is likely to be impacted? You have to have your own natal chart. Nothing means much at all without a context, a personal context for you. And that personal context is your natal chart, okay? Where Mercury happens, what house it happens in, is going to show the area of your life it's going to impact, and it's going to show if that Mercury is going to aspect anything in your chart and what it can tend to set off or just involve. Again, set off, there's a causality language. It shows you what can be involved in the things you're going to have to deal with. It's descriptive of those things. And I realized I didn't switch back to the chart, so hold on. Cut that off. All right, so there's the Mercury retro up there conjuncting, not quite conjuncting the sun. As I was saying, we give it a 2-degree orb. So it has passed backwards over the sun as the sun has been going forward. And so that's where we're at right now. Currently, I should actually refresh this chart. I'm going to do that right now. Okay, here's our current. Actually, I'm going to do a real-time clock chart here. So let's dump that one and go real-time. What this gives me is the chart in motion, all right? So as I'm talking, you're going to see things moving here. You're looking at a chart for where I live. So if you want to look in general, we're talking about Northeast Ohio, and in general, as you can tell, it's right around noon because the sun is sitting on the midheaven. Your chart is actually a big clock, and if you have your natal chart and you know what time, for example, a full moon is happening, you will be able to locate that full moon in your chart, not just by sign, and find out what house it is by sign, but you'll be able to find out what house it's in by time. So there's a little trick for you. The ascendant represents sunrise. The descendant represents sunset. And this kind of gives you an idea of why houses are all wonky sizes and the midheaven goes like this according to latitude, because sometimes the period between sunrise and sunset is short, sometimes it's long. Anyway, from 12, and remember in an astrological chart, everything is kind of upside down and backwards, but this is one place where it's sort of kind of makes sense. I guess it's sort of on its side here. But at any rate, sunrise is the ascendant, and so we go, so that represents like 6 a.m. So 6 to 8 is the 12th house. 8 to 10 is the 11th house. 10 to noon is the 10th house, and noon is represented by the midheaven. And then we go noon to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, sunset. And then we go 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12. The IC is midnight, so we've got that axis of noon, midnight. 12 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. So we have a clock. So anyway, looking at this Mercury retro, now Sun is in Scorpio right now, which intensifies things. It polarizes things. This time of year, things get very stark. Okay, there's a stark contrast between life and death, and things tend to go to the extremes. It's the death. Now I'm going to go into paganism here too. It's the death time of year. It's the life in death time of year. Death time because all the fields are dead. Okay, we've had the final harvest, and everything's fallow. But the life and death part is you've got the seed that you just harvested, which will be next year's crop. So we go into this time of, oh crap, winter's coming, am I going to make it? There's a lot of survival kind of stuff going on. And, just emotionally, people get plunged into dark places because the light is waning, and a lot of people, including me, are affected by seasonal affective disorder, and it starts really showing up this time of year. Some people just love summer and sunshine so much that they get depressed when the days get shorter and the leaves fall off the trees and everything. I personally love it. I have Scorpio rising. I have Pluto, Scorpio's ruler, sitting on my midheaven. I've got Mars, the other Scorpio ruler, squaring my sun. So I've got a lot of personal scorpionic and Plutonian connections, and this is my very favorite time of year. Today, we're getting hit with we got hit with the snow. I don't know if you can see snow. Yes, I love it. There's bitchin' aplenty going on Facebook about people who hate snow. But there was a thing I shared that said, if you can't take joy in the snow, you will have less joy in your life and still the same amount of snow. So, find something to love. I love staying home. So anyway, so we've got the sun in Scorpio, which intensifies and polarizes. Scorpio sends things to extremes, to black and white. It takes out the gray area. That's why it's so judgmental. Things are not, well, they're not both and, they're either or, that's it. Okay, so Scorpios tend to see things in black and white terms and in extreme terms, and that's the way it is because Scorpio is a fixed sign. So, and that's the way it is forever and always, is a very scorpionic kind of thing. So let's look at Mercury in Scorpio. Mercury is thought processes, communication, logistics, schedules, agreements, contracts, anything that we have to communicate about. All right. It also rules electronics. It rules mechanical items, cars, car travel. So places that you go to just sort of travel around the neighborhood. Mercury's natural houses are 3 and okay, brain fart time. 3 and 6. Thank you. Oh my God. See, this is Mercury retro. I have a brain stuffed full of astrological information. Mercury makes things hard to access on a practical level. So, having trouble accessing that practical information that's been in there for decades on a practical level. So, Mercury naturally rules the 3rd house. That's the natural house of Gemini in the flat wheel. Which is the horoscope with Aries on the ascendant. It's just the natural setup, the basic astrological schematic, okay? So Mercury ruling Gemini, 3rd house is its natural house. That house also rules neighborhood and car travel, local short distance travel. All right. Mercury also rules the 6th house over here, which is Virgo's natural house. As the ruler of Gemini, Mercury represents all those things that I talked about, but it represents raw data, communication, networking. So it's the movement of information. I have this information, it needs to go here. I have this information, it needs to be told to this person. That's Gemini. They are constantly moving information. They bring it in, they send it out, they connect, okay, through communication and ideas. Virgo, Mercury ruling Virgo, is about processing the information, not just moving it. Okay, so you could look at it as Mercury is moving information through the mouth and the ears. Virgo's kind of moving information through the intestinal tract. It digests information, and coincidentally, not really coincidentally, but 6th house rules the stomach and the digestion and health as far as that goes. So it's how you process food, but it's also processing of information, analysis of information, looking at things, analyzing, picking it apart, and then synthesizing back into something else. So there's a big difference there between Mercury as far as Gemini goes and Mercury as far as Virgo goes. But Mercury rules all of those things: car travel, communication, all that stuff, the processing of information, the analysis of information. All right. Now, Let's look at Mercury in Scorpio, in polarizing extreme thinking Scorpio. When you take your thought processes in general. So at this time, with Mercury going through Scorpio, and Mercury, by the way, is never more than 60 degrees from the sun. So wherever the sun is, Mercury is going to be within 2 signs, either side of that. All right. So Mercury, so it's not very unusual that Mercury conjuncts the sun, and things in astrology that happen more commonly are less significant. So Mercury conjuncting the sun just brings it into higher focus, but not a really big astrological deal. But Mercury in Scorpio says that our thoughts, our thinking processes, our communication tends to be extreme. Also obsessive. Scorpio rules obsessive things. That's the Plutonian part of it. The Mars part, so Scorpio has 2 rulers, the only sign that has 2 active rulers, both Mars and Pluto. Mars is action, aggression, motivation. So we get very active thinking and very extreme and obsessive thinking at the same time. So you're looking at a time when people who are prone to such things are going to really be experiencing this. Now, let me go back and bring in the natal chart here. This doesn't mean every single person is going to be going through this and, all of a sudden we're all thinking the exact same way. No. There is a thing called natal promise. And it is your setup. Your natal chart is your owner's manual. It is a very in-depth, detailed, succinct description of your makeup, the makeup of your makeup physically, mentally, spiritually, philosophically, all of those things. And what's in that chart is the natal promise. And so what that says is that, you're going to, in some sense, always be true to your nature. And if there's a transit happening that is actually, like, let's say Mercury is opposing something in your chart, Mercury is opposing Mars by transiting Mercury opposing Mars. But you don't have a Mars-Mercury opposition in your natal chart, or you don't have Mercury afflicted in any way, it is not going to impact you nearly as much as if you did. So it's kind of a triggering thing. Transits can trigger what's already there, but they're not going to bestow what isn't there. Okay? So, having your natal chart delineated and knowing what is there is really super important in being able to slog through transits. Because, and this is really important, if you don't have your natal chart and you're putting all your focus on what's happening by transit, so if you subscribe to an astrology page that every day, or you have a calendar that every day is saying, this is trying that, this is opposing that, here's squaring, and you're basing everything on that, you are placing your power in an external place. You are putting your focus externally and saying all these things going on out there are what affects me. That's real close to getting into a victim mindset, because it's kind of like, well, I can't do anything about that. It's going to affect me, but I can't do anything about that. Guess what? That's 99% of life. Everything that happens out there you can't control, and most of it you can't control, and it's going to affect you. But the focus is to be in an empowered place. The focus needs to be on what I do have control over, and that is sitting right here. Okay? So you do have control over your own perceptions, over processing of your own emotional reactions. You have control over the story that you tell yourself. And on a Mercury retro in Scorpio, particularly if you've got a lot of Scorpio energy in your chart, or if you're like me and you've got that Mercury sitting smack on your ascendant right now, you can find yourself with some obsessive thoughts going on, and you can find yourself kind of more affected by the position of Mercury right now. So when Mercury goes retro, Well, you just be really mindful because retrograde motion makes things less accessible on a practical level. It means that your thoughts, ruled by Mars and Pluto, these aggressive and obsessive thoughts, are serving no practical purpose and just make things go round and around and around and around and around in kind of a backwards hamster wheel that can take you right down. And truthfully, Sunday morning, I was in the pit, and I have chronic depression, I have anxiety disorder, have had it my entire life, and I got up in the morning, and I mean the thoughts were black, just really black, and I thought, okay, hold up. And I went and looked at what was going on, and it's like, oh yeah, Mercury is about to hit my ascendant, and the full moon is going off in the same place there in my first house. So, and here's where I will say too, as an astrologer, I don't often look at my chart. I do not look, I don't look at it on a daily basis. I do not follow transits on a daily basis. I look at my chart when I'm planning something. I look at my chart mostly when the question, what the fuck is going on, comes out of my mouth. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but I will tell you that is a great time to get a reading done. And for a little bit of advertising here, I will tell you what I offer. I used to just say, your first astrology appointment needs to be at least an hour, and we're delineating the full chart. And I'm coming off of that because I know not everybody can afford a full hour, and it doesn't mean that I can't answer your specific questions. So I do readings that are 15 minutes, half an hour, and an hour. I mean, I could do 45 minutes, an hour, and beyond, depending on what you need. And I do tarot and astrology. So let's say a 15-minute reading is you going, what the fuck is going on? And you contact me on my Luna ZenWitch Facebook page or lunazenwitch@gmail.com. And you say, help! I need a reading. What can, and so we find a time and I send you all the details of how it goes. You PayPal me. We have our appointment, which is video recorded, and then you have that reading for good and forever. The reason I highly recommend that you get your natal chart reading done in the first place is because it is going to give you a foundation. And then when I go to answer your questions, you're already going to have a bit of knowledge about your chart, and I don't have to spend so much time explaining. And also, one of my aims is to sort of wean you off of me and get you to the point where you have enough knowledge of your chart that you can see what's happening by transit and get some understanding. And then you contact me when you just can't suss it out. When you're like, I've looked at this and looked at this and it's just not making sense, and can you help me? Then I can bring my 30 years or more of experience and astrological knowledge to help you sort those things out. Also, if you're not interested in astrology at all, we do the cards. So we go, hey, you've got a question, just contact me the same way. We do 15 minutes and I answer your question. And again, you get a recording. I do readings by Skype, which is a free account. If there's absolutely no way in heaven or hell that you can get a Skype account, which I don't know what reason that would be, but if that's the case, then we can do it by phone. You will just have an audio reading. You will still be delivered a video recording. So, end of commercial. I also want to show you, well, before we go there, let me talk a little bit more about this chart. This retro will last until the 20th. So we got another week to go. At that point, Mercury will station direct, and then we clear the shadow on December 7th. The post shadow isn't that big of a deal. It's mostly cleaning things up. So my experience of this Mercury retro, pre-shadow, retro, and post-shadow is the pre-shadow is the preview of coming attractions. Oh shit, what's happening? And then during the actual retro is when it's time to review, revise the word re, so retro re going over everything. Okay, so it basically it's kind of like since the last Mercury retro happened, it happens 3 times a year, different times every year. It kind of, rolls forward as we go through. Um, you're reviewing, you're rescheduling. Although, if something needs rescheduled, try to do it once Mercury turns direct again. Things scheduled on a retro tend to need revising. So, that's why I'm thinking this live stream, since this isn't something I'm scheduling, and I am very that I'm gonna, yeah, no words, never again. I am not going to promise like live streams at any particular time, because if I did that right now, I'd be revising it immediately. So during the actual retro, you review, you revise. It is the time to go inside and look at what's going on in your unconscious thoughts. It's a great time to meditate because it sort of gives you access to that more, you know, ostensibly impractical side of your mind. But it's not impractical because what goes on under the surface is what actually runs the show. Even though beliefs are ruled by Neptune, Mercury has everything to do with it because we say, I believe that blah, blah, blah. But the difference between, beliefs and knowledge, which Mercury really is knowledge, is that think about people saying, I really want to do this, I want to do that, intellectually, consciously, we want something desperately, but we can't quite get it done. And that's because there's a belief system in place that's blocking it. So we use our intellectual mind, and a Mercury retro is a perfect time to do this, to go digging for and identifying and exposing those belief systems that are stopping us from getting things done. Again, though, if you really want to look at belief systems, we're going to be looking at Neptune transits, which are long and slow. Okay, so I want to go here to, let's kill the all right, good enough. Good enough. This is a really cool deck called Karma Cards. And they're not a lot of cards. There's a card for every planet, every heavenly body, the 8 planets, the 2 lights, and the north and south node, which are not planets. They are points in space. They are the points at which the moon, they're called the moon's nodes. They're the points at which the moon crosses the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun. So the sun is, to us. Now, remember, all of these things are the way things appear to us on Earth. This isn't scientific. This is astrological. It's all about perception and where the view from where you're sitting. Okay. So we are on Earth. We see the sun going around in a particular path. The moon goes a different way, and it kind of, has different cycles. So it will cross that ecliptic, and those points become significant. The north node in a chart shows the karmic way forward, the way to forge new territory. The south node, which opposes that, is the old path, how we repeat things. So those can be very informative. So we've got 12 cards for that. We've got 12 cards representing all the signs, and we've got 12 cards representing all the houses. Now, one side is kind of purpley, bluey purpley. The other side is sort of orange. The blue side is sort of a description of how things are. The orange side is actions to be taken. Why am I looking at that camera? I don't know. And then we also have physical, mental, spiritual levels. So what these cards do, which is very cool, they're a really good astrological learning tool because they make sentences. So sometimes there's sentences that you'd almost give yourself a hernia to try to figure out what it's saying. Sometimes they're very, very clear, but it's fun anyway. And it kind of can teach you, if you're a budding astrologer, if you're somebody interested in learning how to read charts, teach you how to cobble together an astrological statement with all these different factors in play. Okay, so let's look at Mercury here and sort of the way things are side. So on the physical level, and we see Mercury represents many words. Okay, in Scorpio, resulting from the power of Scorpio is power. Okay, and first house, which is actually where this is going off for me. Let's move it. Well, no, I'm not even going to move it to the 10th house because depending on where you're watching from, this is happening in a different house. Where I'm at right now, Mercury is sitting in the 10th house. If you're on the other side of the globe, it's going to be on the other side of the chart. So again, everything is your local context, your personal context, but this will just give you an idea about these cards. So physical says many words resulting from the power of your actions. Okay. Mental, many thoughts about or from the secrets of your desires. That one's a little harder to chew on. And then spiritual, the awareness of purification to resurrect who you are. Ooh, I like that one. That one talks to me about becoming aware of what you need to get out of your system, what you need to heal in order to emerge, as your true self. All right, let's turn them around and look at the actions. And again, this is in the first house because that's where it was going off for me. Because I have Scorpio rising. Got to get your natal chart done to know where it's going off for you. And not just your rising sign. People will say, I need to know my rising sign and everything. You need to know every one of your house cusps. Because as we were looking at this chart, as we're looking at this chart, and I was talking about how some of the houses are smaller and some are bigger, it's going to be a rare thing, I think, to find an astrologer that uses an equal house system. The system I use is called Placidus. Coke is probably neck and neck with how many people use it. Might be even a little bit more than Placidus. I don't know. But these are unequal house systems because of latitude. And the higher latitudes you get to, house systems almost break down completely. So if somebody's born at a very high, northern latitude or southern latitude, sometimes it is better to go to an equal house chart based on the midheaven. I've only run across that once, and it did make much more sense to make it an equal house chart. And the reason is because you'll get houses like here, the one chart I did, you get these massive houses that are intercepting, two signs, and it makes those very complicated as well. So I set up a chart, equal house chart based on the midheaven. Suddenly everything made sense. It was a person I knew very, very well. So now I've sidetracked myself again. At any rate, so you can't just know your ascendant and then get the information of where things are going to be. You really do need to have your natal chart done. So let's look at the action side of this Mercury in Scorpio in the first house. So physical, it says, let your mind tell you how to control the situation and do it on your own. So let your mind tell you how, that's Mercury. Control the situation, that's Scorpio. Do it on your own, that's the first house. First house requires that you show up in some personal way, okay? It also rules your physical body. Okay, mental level, analyze the highest and lowest aspects. Remember that polarizing thing of Scorpio? Analyze the highest and lowest aspects of the way you project yourself. Ooh. So that means I need to look at, how I'm putting myself out in my highest form and also my lowest form. Ouch. Okay. Spiritually, communicate the extraordinary power of prayer immediately. So this is pretty cool because my full moon ritual this morning. I did ritual last night as well, but the full moon actually happened at 8:34 a.m. This morning for where I am, and so I got up, and at the time it was culminating to exact. I did my prayer practice, and I have many practices. So I will also tell you that I have Mercury Pluto conjunction in my natal chart, Pluto being a ruler of Scorpio, in Virgo. So, talking about processing and analyzing information, what should that tell you? My thoughts, Mercury, can be deep, polarized, and obsessive. I have no control of this. It's the way my brain works. Okay. So what do I do with this? What do I do when things are grinding and grinding and I'm obsessing and my mind won't let me go? You know, I call it my haunted head. And it just gets to the point where, I mean, I've had times where it's for 2 solid weeks I've had a song or just one little section of a song or even a mashup just sort of cycling in my head and haunting me, absolutely haunting me. So what do I do with a brain like this? Well, I do a lot of trance work. I do meditation using tools like Kelly Howell is the one I use all the time. She has recordings, and there are other recordings too. Look up binaural beat, Binaural, like 2 ears, binaural recordings. And what happens when you put headphones on with these recordings, because they're putting a certain tone in one ear and another tone in the other ear, it causes a kind of a throbbing to happen. And that is a frequency, and your brain entrains to that frequency. So when I listen to Kelly Howell, and she has, like, if you purchase an album, there will be 2 tracks on it, and one track will be guided imagery. Usually she also has other kind of things, but one will be guided imagery toward a specific, in a specific context. And then the other track will be just the music and the sound technology. So even if I'm to the point where my brain is just too, in the grip to even follow a guided meditation, I just do the recording, and within 10 minutes, certainly within 15, I lose track of my body. And what's happening is these recordings are putting out the frequency of theta, which is a deep trance state, deeply relaxed. And I feel myself just go there. And it is medicine for your brain. And it costs you half an hour every day. You can do it when you first wake up in the morning, even if you set your alarm early and slap on the headphones and go away for a half an hour. You're still going to be getting deep, deep rest, and not just your body, your brain is going to be getting the rest. So how many of us take things to sleep at night, and it knocks our bodies out, but our brains are still, a deer in the headlights? If you have any kind of anxiety issues, you know what I'm talking about. So your brain also needs deep rest. And there are recordings not only for theta, but there are recordings for delta, which is deep sleep. And if I'm having a cycle of time where I get to 4 o'clock in the morning and all of a sudden my brain wakes up and I just won't go back to sleep no matter what I do, I can put on the headphones, put on a delta recording, and I feel my brain go to sleep halfway through. I hear it when it shuts off, but by then my brain is already entrained into that frequency. I could just take the headphones off and go back to sleep. So there is no fucking excuse not to meditate, you guys. There's no excuse. And if I can't do a half an hour, then I have a 22-minute practice. There's a song by Jennifer Barazan called "She Who Hears the Cries of the World" that's absolutely glorious. It's just it's chanting. It's Olympia Dukakis reads part of the Charge of the Goddess at the beginning, and that's amazing. There is a goddess version of the Hail Mary that goes through the whole thing, and while I'm there, I'm praying and praying and praying. So this is another thing I do when my brain won't let me go, is prayer work, repeating things. I do mantra work. I use a mala, which is a Buddhist prayer beads, and the repetition of a mantra. Om Dare Tu Dare Ture So, Om Dare Tu Dare Ture So, that can unhook, the things that have their claws in my brain. So if I do a mala of green Tara mantra, it takes me 5 minutes. If I do a mala of white Tara mantra, it takes 10 minutes or so. So I have practices that will fit whatever piece of time I'm telling myself I can afford. Because we can always afford it. We just don't do it. We put ourselves dead last on the list of priorities, and we suffer for it. And the way my chart is set up, I really suffer for it. Really, really. Do I do it every day? No, because I'm an idiot and I'm aggressively stubborn. But I do know when I get back on the horse, and I do at least at new moon and full moon. But when I am on the horse and meditating every day, which I have to get back to. But if I do that Kelly Howl every day, and if you do it for like 4 to 6 weeks every day, the same one, you're going to see some big results and big changes. And I guarantee it. It just is, like I said, brain medicine. Can it replace pharmaceutical medications for the brain? Possibly. Possibly for certain things. Now, I also want to say that I don't go through the thing of all that medicine is crap, you just need to get out in nature. No. Medicines help so many people, and when you're struggling and when you can't get there yourself, pharmaceuticals can do for you what you can't do for yourself, and they can literally be lifesavers. And there are certain states of mind, certain conditions of mind, just what, the stress of being in this world every day, the stress of the fucking headlines every day. We're under it, y'all, and I know you're feeling it. I know you're feeling it. And there are things that you can do to help relax your brain, relax your body, and help you get through in a way that doesn't have you wanting to bail out every single day. Okay? And, you've got to love yourself enough to take those steps and do those things. So, let's see. How long have I been going here? 43 minutes. God, I hope I'm live streaming. If not, I am recording it and I will upload this as well, and then you can refer to it to your heart's content. So the last thing I'm going to do here is let's go back to our overhead cam and bring in my pal Socrates. Now, I bought this in Michigan at a Spencer's off of the clearance rack, and I've bought things. I also bought like these little fortune-telling dolls that you press their stomach, and they were, gypsy, which, sorry for the G word there, but they were G word dolls with like curly blonde hair, which, what the hell? But, anything can be used for a divination tool if you decide that's the way it's going to be. And the game that you play with yourself to make this work is you just really invest that this is a special thing, and I'm not going to ask frivolous questions, and you give it a chance to kind of acclimate as you use it over time. This ball used to be horribly inaccurate, and I have found lately that it has been rather accurate. So let's see, what shall we ask? What should we ask? Is this live stream going to get me 1,000 new subscribers?
Hell if I know.
Okay. Fuck you, Socrates. Anyway, I'm really glad that you joined me. If you joined me, God, I hope somebody joined me. At any rate, I am going to upload this, and then you'll see it afterwards. Please share my stuff if you think it's worth it. Please tell your friends to subscribe. Please subscribe if you happen to stumble over this and haven't subscribed yet. The one thing that I do promise is every Monday I put up a video, an unboxing video out of my collection of nearly 150 tarot and oracle decks, which I'm adding to all the time. At some point, I may put up like a list of all the decks that I have so that you can make requests. But I will put up videos unboxing new decks and unboxing the classics, and I hope you're enjoying those. And please tell me down below if there's something that you would like to hear me talk about astrologically, magically, witchcraft and paganism, spiritual practices, ghosts, dreams, all this kind of shit that I've been absolutely pointed at my entire life, which, didn't really launch me into a career. But it's never too late, right? Anyway, thank you so much for being with me. I love you guys. Happy full moon.